Hello Challenge A friends! Today Liam and I are going to show you how we use the fractions printouts alongside the complex booklet and the chart that came out of the booklet. So I pulled this chart out of this booklet, the middle of it, and we're just going to start out by just kind of looking at this chart. All right, so what we do first is we ask the question, is there anything on this chart that you're already familiar with? So Liam, point to something on this chart that you're already familiar with.
Numerators and denominators?
Yeah, numerators and denominators, all right? And we see that this is actually under the domain of fractions, which is what we're kind of using today, so that's good. What do you see on the notes there beside numerator slash denominator, numerator, denominator?
Fractions can be thought of as broken numbers. The numerator is the number of unit parts. The denominator is the total parts.
Yeah. So do you understand what that means?
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of got a good idea about numerators and denominators. What about something on here that we're not so familiar with?
Rational expression.
Okay, rational expression. Okay, so here we see that rational expression is under the domain of expressions. And it looks like there's a definition and then two types of expressions. So read that definition for me.
An expression with negative exponents or division by a variable.
Oh, read this definition, sorry. A series.
Oh, a series of terms without a comparison symbol. A polynomial is a specific type of expression.
Okay, and then we have two types of expressions, rational expression and radical expression. So go ahead and read the definition for rational expression.
An expression with negative exponents or division by a variable.
Okay, and what about the definition of a radical expression?
An expression that contains fractional exponents or roots of a variable.
Okay, so now we're going to use a classical tool to kind of just look at, to kind of attend to these things. So rational expression, what do you see here as the example?
A times x plus b over cx squared plus d times x plus e.
Okay, and what about the radical expression? What do you see down there?
X to the power of 1/2 plus b times x to the power of 1/3, 2 the square root of x plus b 3 square root of x.
All right, so we might have to work on how to read these. We'll come across that eventually, and we'll find examples of how to actually read those expressions. But for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to compare the expressions. So we have a rational expression and radical expression. What is the same about rational and radical expressions? Do you see anything that's the same?
Well, they'll multiply something and they'll add that to something else that's multiplied.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll add that to something else.
Mm-hmm. And what do you notice is different? What's different from rational expressions and radical expressions?
Well, this is dividing the whole thing, but this is just a plain problem.
Yeah, okay, good. So that's all we're doing right now is we're just looking closely at it and just comparing, just getting some of the vocabulary in our mind, looking at the notes about it, and kind of just looking closely at it. If you wanted to, you could even just pick one of these to memorize, and you could just try to memorize it in one of the ways that we've learned how to memorize things in foundations. For example, radical expression, and then you could just write this out over and over and over, or you could say it over and over and over, or you could just write this out or say this over and over. You could come up with a song or a chant, or just try to make help yourself to remember it in one way or another. Okay, so we've looked closely at the chart, at this part of the chart. And then what we can do is just kind of flip through and just notice. What do you notice about this page? What do you notice?
It has like all these different types of numbers.
Yeah, number, what does it say here?
Number representation.
Yeah, so we've got, okay, so up here we have number representations, and there's different ways: numerals, cardinal words, ordinal symbols, Roman numerals, and tally marks. So these are different number representations. Then we have some other boxes down here that you could look at the headings of and just kind of notice. What do we notice over here? What's different about this page than that page? What does this say?
Read and write numbers using place values.
So there's place values that are being shown. And what about down here? Pick one of these squares. What do you notice?
Convert an array to decimal place value.
Okay, yeah. If you wanted to, you could pick one of these. You could kind of narrow it down to one thing and just kind of zoom in and see if you can make sense of it or come up with some way to memorize it, or just look at it, look closely at it, get it in your brain, and eventually you might come across it in your worksheet, and then you'll actually get to use it. And then next time you look at this, you'll be more familiar. And then the last page, what do we notice about this page?
There's like different ways to pronounce different operations, and then there's diagram and different operations here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Okay.
That.
I think earlier we kind of zoomed in on one of these. What did we zoom in on? We zoomed in on, which one did we choose?
A intersect B.
Okay, A intersect B, and that's written as A, and it looks like a little bump, and then a B. And what does it say there? What's under the notes?
Includes only elements that are in both sets. If A equals 1, 2, and B equals 2, 3, and 3, then A intersect B equals 2.
Yeah, and does that make sense to you? We kind of figured it out because 2 is in both sets. So A intersects B at 2. So that's good. So now we've just learned a little bit, and we've just kind of looked through. We've just kind of zoomed through and looked at what we're familiar with, what we're unfamiliar with, and we've learned something. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. We could have even picked something to memorize. So every day we just start by kind of just looking back over this chart and just picking something to zoom in on. Okay, so then what we do is we have this printout here, and we look at the top. What lesson are we on?
2.
And what page does this say?
1.
So then we just turn here into the math map to page 1, which I filled out because I was trying to figure it out. Then we also did page 2 and page 3. So what we did today with page 3 was we compared to the complex booklet, and we noticed that there's similarities. What are some things that are similar?
This square is the same.
Mm-hmm.
And this square is basically the same here. And this is over here. And this is about the same as this.
Yeah. And then what did we do next? What did we do with the instructions?
I underlined the instructions, and then we just performed.
Yes, so we went through at every box, we underlined the instructions because it's important to pay close attention to the instructions, because you might be tempted, for example, down here, if you didn't look at the instruction, you might see this and you might be tempted to think, oh, 100 plus 10 plus 1 equals 11, and then or 111. So you might want to put 111 here, but what do the instructions say to do?
Copy.
Copy. So all you really had to do was just look here and then write the same thing over here, right? So it's important to pay attention to the instructions. So we underlined the instructions for each box and then went back and just picked one box at a time and tried to figure out the answer. And was it pretty simple to figure out the answers?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty simple because if you looked here, right in decimals, sorry, my eyes are not working.
10.
Base 10. All right, so here it says 7 and 1/10. And look, they already wrote the answer. So based off of this, you were able to figure out what it was that they were asking you to do, right? It's similar here. This instruction is given, and then an example of how to follow the instructions is written here, and then you kind of just can fill it in using your reasoning to follow the instructions to kind of copy what it said to do. So pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the goal is to eventually get to the point, we've just been doing 1 page a day, but 4 pages a day, because we're starting out small, just be familiarizing ourselves. But eventually 4 pages will be super easy because we were able to fly through this just by kind of reading the instructions, looking for clues for how to answer the problems, and then just filling it in. The bulk of the time spent is not really this. This is kind of the easy part. the bulk of the time spent is really studying the chart. Studying the chart and just committing yourself to zooming in on something you haven't noticed before. Even if you don't fully understand it, just pick a thing on here, zoom in a little bit, try to make sense of it. If you can't make sense of it, that's fine. Memorize it or compare it to something else. Or just look at it, put it in your brain and say, I don't fully understand this yet, but maybe if I look closely, pay attention closely, I'll come across it in my worksheets. The goal eventually is to have all of this imprinted in their brains because they've looked at it so many times. And even if they don't fully understand it, it will become something that they can recall in their minds when they are going to do these worksheets. And Liam's already experienced that here. Write what does this say? What does the instruction say, Liam?
Write a set of digits.
Yeah, write the set of digits. And what was written there?
Binary, ternary, and decimal.
Yeah, so yesterday we were studying this chart and we zoomed in on this. I was like, Liam, pick something. So we picked this, we zoomed in on it, we took note, tried to make a little sense of it, and then when he came across this today, he just kind of was like, oh yeah, I remember I saw that, and he filled it in. And if he didn't see that already, and he didn't know that, it's okay because, underneath here, I can't get it out. Underneath here, we already have I have the answers. So if he wanted to, he could go and just look at the answer real quick. Oh yeah. And then he could just fill it in. And that would be fine too. So I hope that's helpful and good luck.